Hey everybody, we recorded this episode on October 27th of last year with our good buddy Matthew Bettinger and his chef Evan Cordes. We intentionally held this episode back to wait for their new joint, Hank's Downtown Dive, to officially open in Cary. That opening date is slated for the end of February, so it's coming up. Obviously, it's now mid-January and a lot has changed over the past few weeks. We mentioned the election, local businesses that were once open that are now closed, and some untimely sports references. I'll periodically make updates to clarify during the show when it makes sense. And now,
the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today in studio, we are talking about an up-and-coming project called Hank's that's going to be in Cary and is going to be headed by two people. One, you know very well from a multi-appearance on this show way back 4 years ago on Election Day in 2016.
Episode 3.
Episode 3, OG. Also behind the wonderful sidebar, Mr. Matthew Bettinger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me again.
And accompanying you today is your chef with the new project, Mr. Evan Cordes. Welcome, chef.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you.
So Hank's.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it can't be undersold, and it is so weird. Matt was saying that, it's 4 years ago. We basically have been doing this podcast now for December 1st will be 4 years, our 4-year anniversary.
Of releasing
our first episode. But we recorded your episode, Matthew, on November 3rd or 4th, whatever that particular day was, but it was on Election Day when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were going, and now we are just a week away. So odd that it's timed that way. The funny part back then was this is when we were doing it not only just we weren't doing it in the basement of my house. We were actually doing it in the bedroom, like an office.
Felicia's office.
And we recorded a significant amount of the show, and then my computer crashed, and we lost everything that we said. So then we just had to pick up the pieces of it, and Bettinger's looking at me like...
Well, I'm glad you didn't take it as a bad omen. Like, every time I came around, something was going to break.
Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, I was there for lamb stock, and most everything worked, but the AC in the RV died.
Yeah. No, you know what? It didn't die. It's just that...
I wish I'd been aware of this before now.
Yeah.
Wait, the only guy that knew how to work it was me, and I was passed out.
Yes, that's what happened. And because it was
that Matt's fault.
You had to run the battery, the generator. Yeah,
and I was sawing logs.
Yeah, so you slept outside that night, which was actually smart.
Way better.
Yeah, it was so freaking hot.
Yeah, just still air with 8 dudes in an RV. I was like, I'm out.
Well, and poor Felicia also. Who was there.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So good times. We've had good times.
Great times.
We've been buddies for a while. And you two, Evan and Matthew, you guys have been buddies for a long time, too. And actually,
we have.
Does kind of go way back to an old restaurant that doesn't exist any longer, but is in the same place that is now Coquette. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was called South.
It was.
Yes.
And Matthew, you were front of the house.
I was. It's where I got my bartending start, and I appreciate the managers and owners for not firing me when they probably had plenty of reasons to. But it's kind of where I cut my teeth. I would say that was my first real restaurant job. The first one where I saw some chef-driven food and that kind of stuff.
And Evan, you were in the back?
I was hired as a sous chef there. I just moved back from Charlotte. I'd been back in town for a few months and was hired into the South Kitchen, and we had a really great time.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and we served some great stuff.
Oh, no, yeah. I think we did put out a really good product, and I know I was kind of figuring out my idea of hospitality and my style and just starting to play with beverages and things like that. So it was very formative for me in terms of understanding the industry. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, this is kind of a full circle of, us meeting there, going on our separate journeys, and kind of coming back.
Yeah, because your journey, Matthew, has led you down deep into the beverage program. When I first met you, I believe you were the general manager of Sea Grace at the time, or at least were running Sea Grace.
That's right.
And of course, the Sea Grace stands for Catherine Grace. Am I right?
Yes, my lovely wife, Catherine Grace, who is the other part. Well, she's the third of this 4-person team that's putting together Hanks. And the full name, for what it's worth, is Hanks Downtown Dive. She's the creator of the ambiance and that kind of escapism vibe that is accomplished at Sidebar. It's accomplished at Sea Grace. All of those. Now, granted, Sea Grace is a project of her mother, Katrina. But that's where she's picked up all of her design acumen, and really excited to see her go full bore on this one. The interior is coming along in a great way, and I'm super excited to share it.
And Hanks, I mean, that's obviously after Hank Shoemaker, the longtime line director of the Angus Barn.
No, it's actually a nod to our dog, Henry.
Oh.
So this is the more casual version of Henry, who is not always the most casual guy. But yeah, if you check out our logo, you'll see a dog with wings flying, holding a margarita. And I was talking to Catherine yesterday, and I was like, how did you pull this off? Like, when we were conceptualizing this, you put out into the universe that our dog would be a mascot drinking margaritas and flying, and somehow it happened. Like, good for you.
Right.
Like,
Makes me kind of feel like he's an angel. Is he already dead? Or
no,
No.
he's not. No angel.
Still
He's
alive.
doing great.
Yeah, he's living well.
Just drinking margaritas,
Enjoying the
and
celeb
flying around.
life. Yeah. No, he's alive. He just wanted to go for a little flight.
Love it.
Will he be dressed up as himself for the upcoming Halloween?
Yeah, always. Yeah, he only has one suit.
I mean, with wings and like a margarita attached, maybe.
He'll have
like
a margarita.
the helmet.
We'll see if the wings stay on.
Okay.
I don't know. It was a good idea, and she got with our graphic designer, and it came together, and people love it. Like, the logo has been fully accepted by Downtown Cary already. So, I think we just got to run with it now. There's no going back.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, I'm curious because knowing you for a while, and you got Sidebar off the ground, and then obviously pre-COVID, it was pretty successful. At least from my impression. I hope you feel the same way.
Yeah.
I know it was really welcomed in Downtown Cary, and but I know that you were like, once you kind of got out of the weeds and getting that place open, you're like, we're ready to the next place. We're looking like head on a swivel, ready for the next place. So how did this come about?
I think a lot of it comes from two things. First and foremost, the reception and acceptance we got from Downtown Cary, from a municipal level as well as the community. I mean, it was from the get-go, we're excited to see you here. We're excited that you're part of this community. We want to come here. We want to drink. We want to interact. And it was just, I don't know, I feel like my job is to offer hospitality, and a really interesting way that community offered it back to us, like really made us feel like we were part of it immediately.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. So that plus the enthusiasm of our the other part of this team, Jeff Kennard, who's more the big business side of things.
And a Giants fan, which I
is a
watch
Giants
a
fan,
Giants game with that dude one of these days.
Yeah, he would love that.
Yeah.
Watch out for falling quarterbacks, by the way.
Oh, please.
By the way, Matt and I did play each other in fantasy football this weekend.
How'd that go?
And Team Sad Boy destroyed Team Masad. Just I'll let you figure out who's
There might be another meeting somewhere in the playoffs.
You got to get there first. But
he lives in Cary as well, and I think with the success from a business standpoint and just seeing the strides that Downtown Cary was making, he immediately, in a lot of ways, was the driving force. Was like, what's next? Where are we going from this?
Yeah.
And for me, I've done almost beverage exclusively for the better part of a decade.
Yeah.
And I love the bar industry. It's certainly brought me where I am now, but I'm really excited to offer the full scope of hospitality.
Yeah.
Provide food.
I was just putting you in a box as like the guy that just runs bars, like a fantastic bartender, but also a business mind that understands how to not just run a bar, but like train a team, understand the hospitality. Meanwhile, knowing like, oh yeah, you've known the whole restaurant business for your entire career. You just were kind of focused on the bar for like the last few years.
Yeah, I found what I was pretty good at and stuck with it
Matt
for a
really
bit.
knows his food.
Yeah.
I will put that at. He cooks at home way more than I ever will. Whenever I talk to him about something, he's like, oh yeah, I'm just making some chicken stock. I'm like, man, good for you.
Yeah, like who just does that casually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little on the food side too. So you started at South as the sous chef. So you obviously had, Evan, you had a little bit of an acumen of being in the kitchen even prior to that.
I did. I started in restaurants, I think, when I was 16. I was working at the Red Hot and Blue Barbecue and Waverly Place, which is now appears to be some sort of office building. But for the most part, it's been it's the only business I've really been a part of. It is one that I love dearly. I have varied my experience over the years. I have done front and back of house, and there's something that really brings Matt and I together is the overarching idea of hospitality and guest experience, which is really important to me. It definitely goes far beyond just food. As a person who loves to eat, it was a natural progression for me to stay on the back of house side. It is something that I really enjoy. I really enjoy people's reaction to eating something that they really like. That's something that drives me tremendously. But in this project that, as Matt said, we did go our different paths. Like, I was in Raleigh for a while. I met my now wife, Sarah, and she was going to grad school to get her master's in public health. We went to Atlanta. She went to Emory, and I was there for 11 years. And we just came back. And after growing up in the Raleigh area, it's something that I did not really know how I would feel about coming back, especially, honestly, to Cary. It was something that it was a very different place when I left.
I was going to say, Cary 11 years ago was
if someone
very small.
Yeah, 15 years ago, if someone had said, in 2020, you'll be opening a restaurant in downtown Cary, I think I would have been filled with inner conflict about that statement, but it's something I'm extremely excited about. And mostly because the community really has, Cary is a unique place that it's people want to be excited about things, which I think is really refreshing. Coming from a much larger market in Atlanta, but to see people who really want to support that downtown area, to support their small businesses and to help build that up to what 12, 15 years ago was, still slated as like a beige and brick suburb. And now, people are into it.
Yeah,
So,
I want to set the scene for people that are listening, maybe outside of the Triangle, for people that are listening outside the state. We've talked about Cary before, and we've had the people from Bond Brothers, and we've had Pizzeria Felizi, and we've had Postmasters, which we got to talk about what's going on there because I'm not exactly sure.
Government cheeseburger.
However, for those of you listening, Cary was it's this large, sprawling suburb. It's huge, actually.
It's huge.
it's huge.
I'm not sure exactly what the mileage is.
You even
but
put the H on the front of that huge, Matt.
Yeah, I know. I
Normally
want to
it's
be separated from a
just
certain political
huge.
candidate that I won't name. But anyway, and for a long time it was thought of as a food desert. You had your maybe some big chain names or a lot of fast food and whatever, but there wasn't a lot of...
Yeah, it was just suburbia. It's like they're known as like
suburban
the best school district and very good place to work.
Yeah.
If you were going to go to RTP and be in the tech industry, you would just live there.
Yeah, because you were also within 20 minutes to 15 minutes to downtown Raleigh, 20, 25 minutes to downtown Durham, and you had other options. Cut to now this downtown Cary area with all the previous things we mentioned, it's becoming an it place.
Downtown Cary definitely breaks out of the Cary mold.
Yeah.
It's something that part of it is location. Cary pushes right up against Raleigh and then goes west, where originally the downtown part of Cary, which is very old. It's been there for a very long time.
Yeah, but it was a really, way back was a farming community.
Right. And that's why there's a train track that runs straight through the middle of it.
Right.
It's a single track, and it was a very small downtown area where rural business people could gather to move goods. And now it has built up. The bulk of Cary is to the left of us. It's as far as it pushes back towards Durham, Chapel Hill, Morrisville airport area.
Right.
But it is... I grew up in Raleigh, but I also grew up 5 minutes from where Hanks is going to be. So I think that it's a good blend of what's going on out there. We also are really in close proximity to a very mixed demographic, which I think is something I'm excited about. It allows us to play with a lot more flavor on the food side, and I guess on the beverage side. We definitely get to bring some more fun into it, which I think it just, the whole thing plays really well, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I want to learn more about the specifics of the menu and do all those things. But first, we need to take a little break to talk about
Boss Coffee. Let me tell you about Boss Coffee because it's pretty awesome. It's a Japanese product. It's flash brewed, which means that it's brewed hot and then they flash cold it.
Yeah, like they get real hot and then they get down real cold to kind of keep the flavor in.
Yeah, it's only available on Amazon, by the way. It's delicious. It comes in 3 flavors: black, vanilla, and cafe au lait. I'm a big fan of cold brew in general, and this hits my flavor receptors and everything I need, and makes me feel boss.
Yeah, and just so when you do buy it on Amazon, you can search Boss Coffee, but then make sure that when you are purchasing it, you put in the NCFB podcast promo code to get 10% off. Why not? How about that? Delivered to your door. Thanks, Jeff Bezos. Being
Thanks,
that
Jeff.
small time.
We'll talk to you soon about our contract.
Local business owner.
Yeah.
But he is helping out getting the products to everybody. So go to Boss Coffee. All right. So let's talk about Hank's Downtown Dive.
Yep, that's it.
Interesting that you chose those words. I mean, well, downtown I get because it's in downtown
Right.
Cary. But dive.
Yeah, I would say dive is more of an homage. I tend to think that, I know personally, dive bars are a huge part of what I love about any area, and the homage would be more in the comfortable nature, and I think in some ways your neighborhood dive is where you can feel the most comfortable, and we hope to evoke a similar feeling.
But when I think of dive, I'm thinking like,
Oh, yeah.
torn leather chairs that like haven't been reupholstered in years, decades, cigarette ashes all over the place, carpets torn up, and it's just like
gravelly voice waitress.
Yeah, no, that's probably not it, but I will say
Okay.
the aesthetic definitely has a bohemian vibe to it.
okay.
Some it's not modern in any way. So there will be a throwback to that as well. Cool. And it looks good on the logo.
I think it's also something that which as far as like speaking to what Matt said earlier about finding an escape, you go to a dive. Like when I think of dive, I think the Goat is a great example of a dive.
Yes, it is.
It is a cinder block building with no windows. You do not know if it is day or night once you are inside of it. Now, Hank's has a ton of windows, but it serves as something that, like, you don't have to worry about what's going on outside. Like, come in, have a good time, and it kind of contributes to the little mini getaway aspect of coming in there where you can just come hang, you know, and shed your worries kind of thing.
Most of the best times you have, like Matt back in the day in Santa Monica, what was it, the Gaslight? That was like a karaoke bar.
Yeah.
Many a good time happened there. Even down here, downtown Raleigh, I'd say Slim's is a good version of a great dive bar. Good live music, but keep your expectations tempered. It's like very simple, straightforward. You're not gonna. They almost pride themselves in the fact that they're not going to give you too much.
Yeah. Well, we hope to deliver more than that.
Sorry, Slims.
No, Slim's is fantastic.
Allow us to exceed your expectations.
No,
But yeah, speak softly, carry a big stick type of idea.
What
right?
it comes to is the escapism, and all the credit in the world to Catherine for creating spaces that could be anywhere. They could be in downtown Cary, they could be in Raleigh, they could be, it could be in New York, could be in Nashville. When you're there, you're there. You're there to experience that, and that is the escapism and kind of the short holiday within your own downtown.
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm hungry and I want to escape, what can I expect? What can I get to eat at Hank's?
We're trying to keep it fun. We're definitely tacos is going to play a part as far as someone who wants to stop in, grab something quick. A big thing for me is to do casual well and to breathe as much life as I can into that. So, and I'm a sandwich guy.
Okay.
If I was allowed to, I would eat all of my meals in sandwich form.
Okay.
But
Well, you're an adult. I mean,
I'm a married adult.
okay.
But it's something that
Got some rules to follow.
I want to give someone the satisfying plate of food, and I think
honey, you don't need bread with every meal.
she's kinder than that.
Okay.
But it is something that I think that being able to deliver a great sandwich, or the flip side of that is a really well constructed, hearty salad, which is another thing that I really like. And those are two things that I think it seems like they would be very commonplace, but I don't think they are. I think that to find that really balanced lunch that, isn't fills you up, doesn't put you to sleep kind of thing, and then just having some fun stuff. We've kind of started working through. We've been doing some pop-ups at Sidebar, and the first one was wings, and I think wings, making a unique but really good chicken wing is something that we definitely want to target. Something, and I have no interest in competing with a business that crushes chicken wings. Like Woody's wings are great. But
Will you be selling these in dozens?
We actually have a policy on this
no,
already.
we have a no
Very
even number policy.
Yeah, not going to happen.
No even number.
But you are quoted in the farmviewmarket.com article about questions from you that, and I quote, I like food that comes in dozens. More, the actual question was, what would your last supper be? And you wrote with a great whimsy about it, my last supper meal, 5 dozen oysters, 2 bottles of Movia Puro, a dozen Krispy Kremes, maybe 2 dozen. I like food that comes in dozens.
Well, I think the important takeaway there is that would be anyone's last meal. So it's
Maybe he's
I
going to
don't-
do a baker's dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like simplicity in ordering. We talked about this. We had a meeting of the minds on quantities. When we decided to do chicken wings, doing pop-up food is a totally different animal, which certainly is a of the moment target as far as promoting our concept. But part of it is for me, and I do want to make sure people get the value that they are perceive that they get, that they're satisfied with what they receive.
Sure.
So we had a big debate about how much can you charge for food in a box that you're serving outside and handing to someone across a plastic table? And we're just like, well, we don't want to, I want people just to try it. That's the thing. And so we landed on 7 wings for $10.
Yeah, and that
Which changed my perception on food that comes in dozens forever.
So that was
Now-
post that article.
Yes, this was
room for
very
growth.
recent, and then
Yeah.
it is. I wouldn't say it's spun out of control, but we have certainly embraced that quantities.
Lucky 7.
Concept of quantities since then.
So let it be known, this was 2018 that you were quoted in this, so you're allowed to change your mind.
I hope
it'll
so.
evolve.
Yeah.
Well, so
I think we can all change.
I want to
2020.
know about chicken wings because, I generally try to eat healthy, but I love chicken wings. But so I'm always like trying to make the healthy version, like baked wings. But I know that really to get that crunch, you kind of have to deep fry them. So is that what you're doing, or what's the secret here?
There probably will be an aspect of smoking them
Okay,
first.
Right.
I am a firm believer.
well, what are
in
you doing now with the pop?
dry rub, and
'cause-
then doing for the pop up. I did an overnight dry rub, 24-hour dry rub on the wings. Let them drain.
Yeah.
Roast them ahead of time because I think handling raw chicken outside is super weird. And then we were picking them up off a big green egg.
Okay,
Big green eggs,
roasting
because
then
that's the thing
smoking
that we
on
had
the
that you
pickup.
can cook with outside. The Hank's Kitchen will not have a big green egg inside of it, but we have started to pursue, how we want to impart that flavor and still give a great product. Yeah, they're probably going to be fried. I recently, this past year, found out about the Daytona Wing. That blew my mind. That is a wing that is fried and then tossed in sauce and then grilled. There's a lot out there as to what one can do with a chicken wing. And again, we just want to make, be it wings or ribs or or a pork sandwich
Yeah,
or
I
whatever
think
the case may be. It's something that like I really like food that you once you pick it up, you kind of don't want to put it down, kind of thing. And I think,
By the way, I think you just gave us the secret though. So it's the dry rub. You have to drain out all the liquid.
yes.
And then you roast it, and then you pick it up and then you smoke it.
And then you
forever
can
long,
pick it up however you want.
because that maintains all that crunch. If you get out all the liquids, dry rub, roast, and then you smoke for even enhanced flavor.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think from a
That sounds awesome.
culinary and beverage standpoint, the idea is we want to give you things that are extremely satisfying, familiar to an extent, just a little bit of interesting in there, and just like really comforting.
Yeah.
You know, we're from the beverage program. I think I've built a little bit of a reputation of putting things in coops and being, you know, fairly careful about everything, which is definitely still the priority to do something extremely consistent. But we're looking at a lot more batching, a lot more keg cocktails.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this food and beverage program is also going to go with the service style as well. It is going to be full service, but the important thing to think about when we talk about Hank's as a fully executed concept is we want to be the place for Downtown Cary that's open 7 days a week at a minimum 12 to 12. Open all the way through. For the most part, the same menu all day. We'll amp it up a little bit at dinner, have some fun then. But it's the spot where you can come in, you know, if you're on a Thursday, you've got the day off and you want to meet a buddy while you're figuring out what you're going to do, you can grab a beer and a snack. Or you can, you know, reserve a couple tables, have a birthday, and hang out for 3 or 4 hours. You know, we want to be available in the way that your classic brasserie was for, you know, a small area.
I like the idea of the singular menu. It's what we were doing over at Y Hill, and I like restaurants that are just like, this is what we do. We do this. If you change it, like this is lunch and this is dinner, you always have the people coming to dinner that will say, "Oh, can I get the thing that you do at lunch?" And the worst is saying no to someone. And so you're putting yourself in a situation where you're asking for them to ask you questions that you cannot fulfill.
Right.
And then when you do say, yeah, and you go back to Evan in the kitchen, "Hey, man, I know that you're not doing sandwiches right now, but this person comes in, they're really cool. Can you please do the sandwich?" And you're only doing, because
And to
you're not
Evan's
prepped
credit,
for
he
it.
is not the guy.
That's something, and I think that that's also having. Now that's a common back of house mentality. I'm not gonna, you know, try and hide that. I think once you back of house people, they show up with a plan, and if someone forces them to deviate from that plan, it's, you know, figuring that out is not always their strong suit. But it is something that I think you say yes until you can't. Mm-hmm. And it's not, which I've certainly worked for companies that have the yes is the answer, what is the question policy. And I don't think that makes sense, because sometimes you can't. And that's hard. Like, and I hate having to tell someone that I'm sorry, I can't do that. That's tough. But it is something that, and we actually had this conversation, Matt and I, to say that, like, well, if you have this thing and then someone comes in at night, or it's a lunch thing, or someone comes in at lunch and it's a night thing or whatever, and they're like, oh, I really want that, then it's like, if one person wants it and you can do it, then it's not that hard. Now, if 5 people want it, then you should just have it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it comes down to prep. It comes down to being prepped. We talked about this with like having a vegan menu or not, and most of the time, for so long, chefs would roll their eyes when a vegan diner would come in. It wasn't that they care that there's meat or no meat in it. It's that they just didn't have something prepped to offer to somebody that was a fully composed vegan dish. But if you make a fully composed vegan dish, or have a couple of them on your menu, then sure, order it. Be fine. It's just about being caught with like doing something outside of your normal comfort zone, which is where you'll get a little frustrated.
And I think it goes into how you approach prep and mise en place in general. And it is something that, whether it's gluten or pork is a big one for me. I'm not a believer of like put pork in everything. I think that that era has kind of ended, but also there are enough people who avoid it that, I think we recently had this example of, if you're doing a chicken with a braised greens, then there are other things you can do to unctuous up those braised greens other than like cooking them with ham hock or something like that. Because why limit yourself into what you can do by saying, oh, we're going to use flour to help brown this item, if you could just sear it properly, kind of thing. And which don't get me wrong, like a golden brown delicious flour butter crust on a piece of fish is amazing, but is it necessary? No. And I think especially now that you lose more interest from people by limiting their options, then I would like, if someone comes in and say, oh, well, I don't eat these things, it's like, I got you. Like,
I love that. I love that mentality personally, like, because everything for a while, but not that it doesn't taste delicious, but can't you also make something delicious that like doesn't have to be filled with butter and bacon and all these things? And that got me to thinking. Actually, I'll pose another question to you, some maybe perhaps to think about. But I'm always after. I love chicken parmesan, but do you need a breaded cutlet to then be drowned in sauce and meat as well? Like, couldn't you do it? And I did a pretty good version of it the other day. I'm gonna say.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We can open up a restaurant, Matt. You and me, chicken parms.
I mean, we could.
Hey, that sounds good.
But
I will be there.
Is there a sandwich form? Evan would like to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure of course, chicken parm sandwich is like that. Oh my god!
But then that's a
fat
carb
kid
on
me
carb
was like, chicken parm sandwich was my go-to deli, sandwich. But anyway, real story short, the easy trick was you just marinate it in some yolk and pepper and oil and get it then, and then you brown it, pan sear it first, and then you bake it later with the sauce and everything else, and it worked out really well.
Works out great. Two things, and which this goes into a dairy aspect, which I think can be another polarizing category of foods, which I realize a lot of people avoid dairy for various reasons. But yogurt marinated chicken, I think, is a great one. And I think there's a lot of like kind of Middle East technique that plays into like a really great product using. We talked like in the ideology of a well-constructed sandwich, like what do you give to give the crunch factor on the sandwich? You know, sometimes it's potato chips or sometimes it's this, and we really want to do a chicken sandwich that has crunchy chicken skins on it. And like that's something that we're like, I think that's going to work. You know? We haven't established for sure if it's going to work yet, but I believe in my heart that it's going to work. So
you just have to find out exactly how to execute. But
it's something that I think that you can hit those marks, like crunchy, like bake off a ton of cheese until it gets, nice and crunchy. And then it's the thing where when I make a burger, I like to do it in a pan, in a cast iron. And then one of my favorite things that comes out of that pan is after you melt the cheese and it's all the cheese that's stuck on the bottom, and it's like, that's like, burgers are great, but like there are a few things to it that make that magic about it. And it's like, then you can take those things and apply them anywhere. And then you have a bunch of things that are like, oh man, this is not a burger, but this is great. And it kind of evokes the firing of synapses in your mind to be like, oh man, this is what it's like to hold that really great sandwich in your hand and take a bite out of it. And it has all those things, like I used to have at this place or like my mom used to make or any of those.
I think it's all about that satisfying, that feeling you have when you have that super satisfying, fulfilled moment of food and beverage.
Yeah.
It's just the drink's on point, the food's on point, the ambiance is there, and you're in that situation.
Matthew, walk us through like the nuts and bolts of like the size, like what's the square footage? Are you gonna have a bar? Like what's the seating?
Totally.
Like what patio? What's all this stuff?
Yeah. So it is bar forward for sure. You walk in the front door and you are in the bar. The layout is not that dissimilar from sidebar, and I think. That kind of comes from something I learned early on in my hospitality career. If you work at an establishment where you got to put wine on every single table, then you're going to have bottles of wine that every guest can see at all times, just because it's always presenting yourself. And
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's your water bottle
different
looks...
levels.
Yeah, of course, you're right. But so you walk in the front door and right away you see the L-shaped bar with the curve, which is something that I'm realizing is becoming a bit of a hallmark of our spaces. They've all had them. I think there's something really magical about sitting at a curved bar.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And being a bartender who has a little bit of ego about interacting with people, a curve allows me to interact with as many as possible.
Right.
You walk in and, there's going to be this beautiful brass bar top, some recessed taps, half of which will be kegs of cocktail, the other half beer. In this bar area, you'll have 3 U-shaped booths, and that defines the entire initial seating. To your left, we have a room that we're calling the sunroom. It's glassed on 3 walls with an L-shaped banquette. So there is no actual individual standalone tables. Everything is a booth or a banquette or bar seating.
Now, 2 of those walls and the sunroom open.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of them completely opens at like a banquette height, and then the third wall completely opens to lead into the patio. So the sunroom becomes essentially indoor-outdoor dining. And our patio is recessed, so it's below street level. That's going to be, the ground is held off by a large retaining wall that has banquette seating on it as well. And then there's another door that'll loop back into the bar area.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. It's not a huge
Doesn't
space.
sound like a dive, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they're all kind of give it a dive feel, I bet.
And I am aware that it does not sound like a dive. And we were fully aware for that criticism.
Kind of a whimsical dive.
It seemed
but
a lot
cool.
bigger 3 months ago.
Yeah, it's
before
gotten
they put a bunch of
small.
walls up. But yeah, I think it's going to be not small and not cozy, but
Pre-COVID seating, we were looking at 60-ish inside.
Okay.
Outside's 40, give or take.
Yeah.
So 100-person turn, know?
That sounds
solid.
good.
And it's a 2,900 square foot restaurant.
when you put it in those terms, I do not feel bad about the amount of space we took up with back of house.
No.
Yeah, that was initially I was like, I think it might be too big.
It's not.
But it's not. It's perfect in every way.
We'll talk about this in February, see if it's still perfect. But no, really, the idea is immediately, as soon as you walk in the front door, we want you to be transported to a certain extent. There's some really, really pretty colors and materials going on. All the banquettes are being custom made. The bar top's being made by, a fabricator that's worked with Catherine and her family through all of their spaces for years and years.
Tables are being custom made.
Tables are being custom made by this guy on my left.
Oh, yeah? You're making them yourself, Evan?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a cool conversation. By the way, the chef made the table at your
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and just it's going to be really the space is.
what is
I
the
will say
location
exceptionally
exactly?
put together. 111 East Chatham Street, and I believe it will be Suite A. So if you're familiar with Downtown Cary, Chatham and Academy intersect, we are right there.
Yes, you're right next to pharmacy.
Directly across the street.
Across
and the
from
theater.
pharmacy. Yeah,
right
and
there.
the theater.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you walk out of pharmacy, across the street, you will hopefully not stumble into our patio. You will walk around the embankment and then sit on our patio.
Nice.
Yeah, people are just falling into the patio.
Yeah, we're hoping that
We're
does
really
not happen.
hoping that's not enough.
Yeah. It's truly, and I think the location, I've always been really into the idea of finding a space and figuring out what is needed in the community. There's some restaurateurs, or I'll not call myself a restaurateur, but I guess I just did.
Yeah,
Kind of are.
yeah.
I think there's some people who have such a strong vision and are driven by the specific thing they want to put on the plate or in the glass that, they find the spot and they make it work.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily us. I think we find communities and places and say, hey, this is what we think, in our opinion, this community could need or could embrace.
Yeah.
And that's entirely what this is. We saw a need for the spot to hang out at any point and be consistent all the time.
That's come up a lot on the show and seems to be what's really resonating all around the country today is have an anchor and make it specific to the place that is what's driving the business.
Yeah.
I think, and we talked about this conversation for Matt and I started in January,
Yeah.
I think, and
Wow.
Matt called me to ask some completely unrelated question, and then I became employed by him. So it worked out great.
I've got a method.
But it is something that I think, which, especially looking back at it now, and everything that we've seen in the past 6 months, especially in this business, which again, just means the absolute world to me to see how the hospitality business as a whole has just been ravaged and adapted and worked together, and how the community has built itself, but also to see how, and it kind of goes back into that thing you're saying about like where somebody comes in with a dietary restriction and people groan, that like I'm thrilled that that's not really, it has empowered us to speak to our guest base a little bit and to start a conversation about like, and we started in a place that we wanted to be there for the neighborhood, and that's more important now on the backside. Not even the backside, in the what is really just the midst of this pandemic situation, to say, hey, we can communicate with our guests and not let it compromise our ideals and our philosophy, but to also be there with what people want to experience.
Yeah,
And
I think this pandemic was like it with the shutdown of all restaurants. Aside from whatever it's almost like a day of reckoning for an industry that many could consider to be kind of broken. Like there are a lot of things that hadn't been done right, and there's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of inequitable financial gains and earnings to be made. There's a lot of drug use and just a lot of abuse in general, and then also just a lot of like little juice for all the squeeze that you're doing. Meaning people are just burning themselves out so hard to
it's been
work at this
strained
place.
for a long. I mean, it's been strained for a long time. Like,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
like it's been a strained business. Like if you see, I feel like if you see a person who is approaching 40 who is in the business, it's one of two things. They're either extremely good at their job, which is great, but or they felt like they have nowhere else to go, and that,
Both could be true, by the way.
This is true. I mean, completely. But it's something, as a person who is pretty much in that situation, and I've a lot of colleagues that were in my initial generation, guys that I was sous chefs with, 15 years ago, that very few of them are still in the business. And I think it's a hard business to be in, but it's also an extremely rewarding one. It just requires a little bit of attention and support between not just between the employer-employee relationship, but between businesses, and on the unfortunate, there's a tremendous amount of unfortunate events that have taken place in the past 6 months. But I think as far as strengthening a community goes between restaurants, and especially what I observed take place here in Raleigh while I was still in Atlanta, was something that I found extremely admirable. To see restaurants, owners, and operators getting together and say, hey, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? How are we going to prevent all of our employees from being out on the street? And it's not even the physical aspect of it, but just the mental idea of hopelessness is really hard. And I feel like this community came together and did everything they could to avoid it. So it says a lot.
Yeah. Matthew, where were you? Where were you in still pushing forward to open this restaurant, like right when the pandemic kind of shut everything down?
I mean, maybe it's just because I'm not smart enough to realize it, but I never really faltered.
Like you always were focused on opening.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a point where it's like, hey, how do we get out of this lease? How do we change what's going on? I mean, I didn't see... I mean, obviously, things have changed, and they're never going to go back to exactly what they were, but that didn't change my drive to offer this kind of hospitality. If anything, I wanted to maybe do it a little bit more so that on the back end of it, or maybe not even the back end, but the new side of things were there to say, hey, come get a taco and a beer, or we got cocktails on draft. This is things are pretty bad, and they have been for a while. But again, I keep going back to it. This is your little vacation for a Thursday night.
Yeah.
And if anything, I think it emboldened that. And I mean, that might be a little.
There was one moment, Cinco de Mayo. I remember it fondly, where we all stood in Matt's kitchen and said, "Is this dumb?"
Yeah. It was also the first time
And then
any
we
of us
said
had
no.
hung out with anyone in a while. And so we had been enjoying beverages, and we were all talking a lot at each other and had forgotten how to socially interact, I think.
Well,
And then you were like
we got to
letting
the
out
other
your
side of
own
it.
insecurities. You're like, oh, wait, how do I do
But
this?
I think on the back, after that hang was finished, we were like, yeah, okay, this is, it's important. And that's not to, say that restaurants are the most important thing out there. Obviously, everyone's trying to figure out where they place in this, but for me, I think they are.
Hey, before we get out of here, I do want to. We talked about it a little bit earlier, just because you're in the know, and it's apropos to Downtown Cary. Mm-hmm. What is happening at Postmaster / Government Cheeseburger? Do you know? Because I know that Chef Chris Lopez, or maybe Max, announced that he's out, and I guess it kind of insinuated that his team's out at the end of this month or very soon.
Yeah,
do we know, or can you say? I
mean, I know pretty much what everyone else does. I will say, from the get-go, they've been outstanding neighbors. I fully expect them to still be. At the end of their shift, we always saw them, and staff bounced back and forth.
Yeah.
Couldn't ask for a better set of neighbors anywhere. With Downtown Cary, the whole set's great, and they've been a huge part of it. I know for me, kind of my class of hospitality people, bartenders and stuff like that was a little while ago. So to see some faces that are, a little bit younger and kind of coming into their own and expanding out of just this downtown circle into downtown Cary was really awesome. I think it made me feel even a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
I was like, I can recognize where all of these people are in their career and in their life right now. Yeah. And, then this whole thing hit. We tried to do some to-go stuff at Sidebar, and then, like everyone else, wrapped it up. And then I feel like as soon as that happened, I saw them come out with the government cheeseburger, which across the board is probably the best pivot. And I know everyone's like really tired of hearing that word in this industry, but that I saw anyone pull off that. And then Matt Kelly in Durham with his pivot on St. James.
Jimmy's Dockside.
Jimmy's Dockside. Yeah. Great branding. I haven't had the opportunity to have it yet, but I was really impressed by it. But the government cheeseburger guys, they created an image and they leaned hard.
Yeah.
They leaned super hard. I know they popped up on some national radars, and I give them all the respect in the world for it. I, had it a number of times and then took a nap afterwards, usually. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, because it's a big burger.
It's a big burger.
Yeah.
I remember one of them, I think it was Hayden, sent me a message asking me something. I was like, dude, you need to get a wedge salad on there. And I'm not saying it did it because of that, but he and I had talked about that before. And, I went the next week, had one, and it was killer. So in terms of where things sit, I don't know.
So maybe those guys want to push on with government cheeseburger, and then
I couldn't venture to guess.
Yeah.
I wish them all the best, and I'm not really concerned about any of them.
Yeah, no, I'm sad to see it go if it goes, or I don't know.
I do think it's going to be done at the end of November, at least.
Government cheeseburger is going to be done, but do we know if Postmasters is going to continue?
Okay, to clarify, Government Cheeseburger is no longer in Cary. Postmaster has a post that says, "Get ready for big things coming soon." Stay tuned for that. As far as the people that made Government Cheeseburger exist, they have now transformed into Fine Folk, which is a short order kitchen in Raleigh's favorite basement bar, Foundation, which is exactly across the street from our kitchen studios in downtown Raleigh. So check them out because they're open Wednesday through Sunday. They're a badass group of guys making really, really good food at an awesome bar. So check them out, Fine Folk.
The more good things that open give more people a reason to come and stay. And that's the change that we saw in downtown Cary just in the 2.5 years of Sidebar being actively open. Is at first, people would come out and be like, "Oh, I'm checking you out. I'm having a cocktail." And then it was like, "Oh, I've been downtown all Saturday. We got down at noon, had lunch, and it's 8 p.m. at night."
Yeah.
And if you can do that, if a downtown can keep that going, you're in a great place.
Totally.
And I think that was another thing where we decided to double down on, building Hanks.
Yeah.
We're in a very weird time for the industry and for the world, right? For everything. But Matt Weiss and I have, been texting back and forth about who we're going to have on the show. And, we just had our friends Mike and Bobby for Bernie Wilds. And then, of course, Matthew Bettinger. We've been good friends for a long time. This is your new place. A good friend of ours, Jared, we're going to have him on to talk about J Lights, which is opening in Durham. Matt was like, we've got a lot of buddies that are on the show. And not that that's good or bad. It was just an observation, just a lot of friends that are doing things. Are we small time? Are we just talking to our local friends and doing this? And I thought about it for a little bit and I went, no, that's the industry now. That's it. And we also are so connected to everybody and we're rebuilding. We are the people that have been doing this for a while, the ones that are going to rebuild it. When we finally build it, when we, the locals in this area, build it, then the national chains will come back and all the other big people will coming. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that last year I wrote an article that wasn't necessarily very well received by the celebrity chefs, but I wrote an article in Raleigh Magazine saying here come the carpetbaggers, these people from out of town that are going to come capitalize on our local industry.
Well, that's also, you could say, pandemic. Was a pandemic casualty.
Oh, of course. Yeah. All of this. Many restaurants were, but it's we are now at this rebirth, regrowth phase, and who's going to do it? Well, it's not going to be P.F. Chang's coming through and start building a bunch of new restaurants. It's going to be the people that live here and the people that are doing it, and we know what people want, hopefully, and you guys are from here. You're from this area. In fact, that, Evan, you took 11 years to go figure out what another place was like Atlanta, which has an amazing food culture, and bring what you learned back, I think is fantastic for the local area here. Like, we're getting to, benefit from all of what you've done. And I really do think that's kind of like where we're headed. And I feel positive about it. I feel like you can't keep us down. You can't keep North Carolina down, the Triangle, Raleigh, Cary, like whatever. But creativity and entrepreneurship has been the underlining focus of what we've been featuring on this podcast for now getting close to 4 years. So, I mean, if you think about it, gosh, we had Hai Tran as our first person on, who was the beverage director at the Umstead, and then he announces on that show that he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I don't work for a North Carolina company anymore. I'm going to go to Philadelphia and work at the Rittenhouse. And then we continue from there. But man, all the stuff that we've done, nothing has really changed in the sense that it's still locals being entrepreneurs, building, rebuilding, and doing what is necessary for the culture. I think it's beautiful. It's why we're here.
Otherwise, I'd have to get a job at a desk, and that's just not going to work out for me.
Or a P.F. Chang's.
Hey, shout out to Darden Restaurants. I have a price. I'm just kidding. Maybe it's hard-headedness. I think everything you're saying is spot on, but I got nothing else to do.
But also, it's why we have a show and our show exists, right? Because people out there love the fact that the small guy, quote unquote, can create their own thing and see their creativity and hard work through, and have the ability to open a business and the community to support it.
Yeah, to be able to embolden locally, I think is awesome. I think there is beauty in the somewhat transient nature of our business, and I don't just say this as a person who moved from one place to another for a project, but I think that, and it's a conversation my wife and I have had a lot. We considered the idea of moving out of Atlanta. I'm really fortunate in the fact that if there is a restaurant in a place, I can be employed.
Yeah,
and food people. In all likelihood, people will always seek a meal outside their home, which provides a level of security for everyone involved. This year has definitely put that to the test, without a doubt. But there is a beauty of being able to go from one area to another and share those experiences. Because while the entrepreneur, restaurateur might come in and sign the lease, it is the locals that built that restaurant. They don't do everything. It is the servers, it is the faces, it is the people who are in the kitchen and that wash those dishes that make a restaurant. Like you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't empower those people, then it is unlikely that restaurant will succeed. And I think that that's important, because it really is a local economy and a local concept, and that's what grows those people. And whether they want to build something where they are or do it somewhere else, that's an opportunity that they can pursue, which is pretty sweet.
No, it's pretty awesome. And I'll just take that opportunity to segue into the fact that another local company that has made good in the hospitality realm is our good friends at the Triangle Wine Company, started by Chris Roche and Glenn Hagedorn. And they have 4 locations. And to the success of what we're talking about, of people like you in this area, they're opening up a 5th in North Raleigh. They have one in Cary and Waverly Place, so you can cross promote there with them. They have a store in Morrisville. They have one out in Southern Pines, and in Holly Springs, of course. They are great partners in terms of having all the wine and vermouth and beers that you could want, and they will also deliver to you. You can also have a curbside delivery. Just simply go to trianglewineco.com, and don't forget to use the NCFB promo code to receive a nice discount, whether you're going online or you're in the store.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can get some fantastic ice cream that has alcohol in it, because we all think a little differently about dessert now that Proof Alcohol Ice Cream has created such a wonderful, not since peanut butter and chocolate have two things gone together so well, booze and ice cream. And maybe there's going to be like a peanut butter chocolate booze ice cream that will come through. That would really hit it on the head. But they do have a pumpkin spice ice cream that just came out for fall. They have the delicious apple pie moonshine. Oh, my personal favorite, the bourbon caramel. But Proof Alcohol Ice Cream, not from North Carolina, but from South Carolina, and we like them too. They're pretty cool. Second favorite state in the area, but in the area, that is.
People from Virginia are calling right now.
Yeah. Well, Virginia, come up with some good things, right? Like, just give us something to promote. No, I'm just kidding. By the way,
Shots fired.
I did spend a fantastic time in Wintergreen, Virginia, with the family, and had some of the best cider that I've ever had in my life, and delicious ciders. And weirdly enough, because we get contacted by people that want to be on the show all the time, Felicia and I just got out of the Luray Caverns, and we're in the parking lot, right in the center of Virginia, and we received an email from the Virginia Distilling Company advertising, saying, "Hey, we would like to be on your show. We just made all this liquor." And I look across the street, and it's the Virginia Distilling Company. Literally across the street from where I was, and I got an email saying we'd like to be on your North Carolina Food and Beverage podcast.
Their algorithm is on point.
Right, how does that happen? So,
Man.
So we might need to reach out to the Virginians. I like them too. Third best state for right now.
But potential for rising.
Yeah. But anyhow, yes, we were talking about Proof Alcohol Ice Cream. So please go to proofalcoholicecream.com. You can also get your Proof Alcohol Ice Cream here at the kitchen. Well, you can't get it. You have to be on the show to get it. You guys will get it before you leave. But you can get it at the Triangle Wine Company and also Lowe's and Harris Teeter's in the beer and wine section in that beautiful red branded freezer. Get yours now and let everybody know that the NCF&B sent you to get it.
That's right. Gentlemen, Matthew, always a pleasure to see you.
Always.
Thank you for constantly returning to the show and keeping us up to date on what's going on. Evan, great to meet you, and we wish you the best at Hanks. And so for those of you that are listening and, mouth-watering, from what we're told, that this is going to open softly maybe the end of 2020 and grand opening beginning of 2021. So everybody go to Hanks when it opens. You will eat and drink very merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.